I'm Bill Maher, and I've asked you all to my apartment for a very important reason. There's been a murder. No, there hasn't been a murder. I want you here because I want to tell you something. I want you to learn something. It's not going to be boring, so don't hit the clicker. Oh, that's right, you're in class, you can't. Anyway, I'm a comedian, but I'm something more than that, something much more. Okay, I'm just a comedian, but listen, I'm also someone who makes his living from looking at what's going on in the world, from the news. The only stuff on TV you kids actually blow off. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm doing this video, and quite frankly, so am I. But I'll let you in a little secret. You kids today are the leaders of tomorrow. And I'll let you in an even bigger secret. You kids today are my audience of tomorrow. So if you don't watch the news, I don't have an act. So sit back and watch. And as you do, think about your responsibility to the world and to me. I have a dream.
The stories come and go, and I just remain the same.
I was a history major in college, and if you don't think history's funny, let me remind you, I have my own talk show, and you don't. Let's talk about history and the news. What's the connection between history and the news? Well, I'll tell you. The news is the history that's happening today. Popcorn? The news is history that's hot off the press. Now, today's news is what your kids will ask you about sometime in the future when they talk about the olden days. And believe it or not, you're going to have to talk to them about Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and Iraq and Haiti and rap music and Madonna and, well, actually no one should have to talk about Madonna. But you will have to talk about America's Stupidest Videos and O'Doul's non-alcoholic beer, and I'm telling you, it is not going to be easy. And that's because history just keeps happening every day, right now. And just as the things that were done and decided and fought for in history affect you today, the things that you do and decide and fight for now are going to affect everybody tomorrow. Now, I told you that the news was history hot off the press, and speaking of hot off the press, I had a copy of the Constitution. Oh. I always lose it back there with the remote. The Constitution of the United States. See, it starts right up here with "We the People." There it is, "We the People," and it ends at the bottom with "without the express written consent of Major League Baseball." That is weird.
The men who established the Constitution were determined that governmental excesses must be avoided in order to protect the rights of the people.
The Constitution. Let's face it, it's kind of an old, formal document. It's not what I'd call a quick read, and I certainly don't recommend taking it to the beach, but it does do what it was supposed to do. It designs a government based pretty much on demerits. What that means is the Founding Fathers didn't know what they wanted so much as they knew what they didn't want, much like yourselves, in fact. So the Constitution describes a type of government that looks nothing like the one they had back in England. Well, except for the powdered wigs, of course. But the Founding Fathers decided that this time there'd be no king, no taxation without representation, no silly accents, demerits. All they wanted our government to do was, 1, establish justice. 2, provide for the common defense, you know, the army, the police, the guardian angels, anybody who's willing to wear a t-shirt outside their body. 3, promote the general welfare. Pretty broad goal, but that's what it means. And 4, secure the blessings of liberty. You know, freedom of choice, religion, radio stations. 4 things. 4. That's all the big boys in Washington are supposed to be doing. You know, when they're not too busy hobnobbing with really important people like Streisand. Yet, the Constitution takes pages and pages to describe how the government is supposed to do just those 4 things. So, after all the writing, the Founding Fathers finally realized that maybe they didn't do a good enough job limiting the powers of government. Remember, they were rebelling against absolute power, and they wanted to be sure it didn't rear its ugly head here. So, they added a Bill of Rights.
Remember, it's freedom of religion. It is not freedom from religion.
The government cannot determine what is art and what is not art.
And he uses that kind of language?
Now, while the Constitution describes what the government can do, the Bill of Rights tells the government what it can't do. Yeah. It defines the rights of citizens. Now, keep in mind the citizens these founding fathers were protecting were themselves. They didn't care about women or Indians or black slaves. They were concerned for their own rights, the rights of rich, white, male landowners. Boo! And hey, who wouldn't want to bend the rules in favor of the home team a little? But in their rebellious fervor to distance themselves from England's royal hierarchy, you know, that attitude of, hey, my dad's king, what does your dad do? They wrote this document, the Bill of Rights, to safeguard their own freedom. And because of the way it was worded, it now safeguards all of us. Obviously, these forefathers had a greater vision of freedom than just solving their own problems. And that brings up an interesting question. If the government can't take these rights away from us, can we take rights away from each other? Well, the history of the United States is full of examples of we the people trying to infringe on each other's rights, and you can see examples all around us today.
Smokers have become America's new leper class.
They want to put a stop to smoking.
We're taking an action that is good for everyone's health.
It might be a simple thing, like the right to smoke, or for someone else, it might be the right to not have anyone smoke next to them. For millions of Americans, smoking is one of life's little pleasures, like your morning coffee, or the crossword puzzle, or, say, passing notes in class. But smoking annoys other people, so we banned it, except in designated smoking sections. But then the smoking sections annoyed people, so we banned them. And pretty soon, the only place you're going to be able to smoke is in the bathroom, which is not only a drag, it's probably the only place where the air is already worse. But this whole smoking thing raises the questions of rights and freedoms, what the government can or can't do, or shouldn't do, what we can or might do to each other, where our rights run into each other. And like the Founding Fathers, we all try to use the Constitution and the Bill of Rights to protect ourselves. By the way, on a personal note, don't smoke. It's not cool, and you smell like a monkey's wedding. Okay, let's get to the First Amendment, the first right in the Bill of Rights.
We've repeatedly given you copies of the First Amendment.
The First Amendment states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And that was their idea of a punchline. The First Amendment ensures that Congress shall make no law respecting 5 freedoms. 1, grievances. 2, religion. 3, assembly. 4, speech. And 5, press. Got it? Okay. Then good night. You've been a great crowd. No. Seriously. When does my freedom of religion infringe on your right to privacy? For that matter, what if my right to assembly screws up your right to a little peace and quiet?
On my side to side. Right, okay, stay there. I am.
Yeah. Does the KKK have rights to assemble and to speak? What about the Nazis? Hey, for that matter, anybody can protest abortion, but can they block the entrance to the clinics? You know, sometimes assemblies turn into riots pretty quickly. If you've been to a Bulls championship, I think you know what I mean. And who's to say a championship riot is any less dangerous than the LA riots?
It all began when a retrospective of his photographs.
They want the stores to stop selling it. Gangster rap.
Basically, the Bill of Rights protects free speech. Great, but what about speech we pay for? Do we have rights as a CD-buying, movie-going, TV-owning, radio-listening public? Or can we only exercise our right not to buy, go, watch, or listen?
What is it, buff coat and beaver or beaver and something else?
The hate mongers prey upon intolerance and ignorance.
And what about hate speech? Maybe it is free and protected, but is this the kind of speech the drafters of the Constitution had in mind? Everybody has their own idea of what kind of speech is dangerous. Maybe unpopular revolutionary speech is exactly the kind of speech this amendment was meant to protect. That also goes for angry, controversial rap songs. As obnoxious as rap might be to your parents, that's how obnoxious rock and roll was to their parents, and how obnoxious the Declaration of Independence was to the British elders, especially when they cranked it up to 11. Plus, free speech, even free, dangerous speech, clues everybody into what other people are thinking. So, do we let people decide what they want to listen to? Or do we make them listen to everything? Maybe censorship isn't the answer at all. Maybe the best answer is to have more speech rather than less, where everyone gets heard. Yeah, that kind of sounds like the First Amendment to me.
You don't want to look like the average Joe on the street.
And if speech is a form of expression, what about clothes? You know, something that's coming back into fashion is the notion of school uniforms. And the simple reason is things like gang-related violence and the hipness of $150 sneakers are making kids think just a little too long about what to wear to school. Now, Thomas Jefferson was certainly no rap singer, and while he dressed a little too much like a pirate for my tastes, these problems were probably not what he had in mind in 1787. And yet, all these issues, religion, speech, assembly, expression, they are all addressed in the First Amendment. And like it or not, they are all addressed to you.
I'm sorry, I can't release the Harrigan's address.
Another issue addressed to you, and I do mean you, no, you, yeah, is your address, your home. The Bill of Rights is just as interested in your property and your rights to privacy as it is in your speech. The Third Amendment says you don't have to house soldiers, unless, of course, you're into that kind of thing. And life, liberty, and property are treated with equal importance throughout the Bill of Rights.
Sheriff's office, search warrant! Go.
But one thing that's especially important to you and me, and certainly O.J. Simpson, is the Fourth Amendment, the right of search and seizure. Okay, ready? The right of the people is to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. And they wonder why nobody reads the Constitution these days. This is called search and seizure. And if you look around at other countries, the cops can go through your home, your car, they can go through all your stuff without a search warrant. And they can take anything they want, even your O.J. trading cards. In this country, the police need a search warrant to take stuff. But they can't take away guns, and that's all because of the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, which is totally different from the right to walk around in a sleeveless shirt like Stallone in the Rocky movies. This is the right to have guns. The Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, and it goes like this. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Yeah, good point. The Second Amendment promises us the right to bear arms. Okay, but that was when we had no standing army. Guns were meant to be used on the British in case they invaded us again, like they did in the War of 1812, which I'm sure you all remember. They weren't meant for us to be used on each other.
22 American cities set homicide records last year.
We're not ever going to stand by and let politicians that won't stop criminals ban the right of law-abiding Americans to own firearms.
The passage of the Brady Bill requiring a waiting period for handgun buyers.
But these weapons just have no place on the streets. Let's get them off.
But you know, things have gotten so bad in this country, a Chicago housing project was actually ready to give up another constitutional right, protection from unlawful search and seizure, just to get rid of all the guns in their buildings.
We had to beg CHA to do these sweeps.
I will be working with our staff, and we'll be searching for weapons.
People need their privacy in their own homes, and they don't need people coming in there without them knowing and sweeping their apartment and just, taking over.
Well, the cops never got the chance to gather up the guns, not to mention about $35 in sofa change. But it shows that people are thinking more and more about giving up rights in order to gain safety.
Police work day and night trying to take guns off the streets.
Which brings me back to our own Constitution. Every argument against gun control rests on that one line from the Second Amendment that was written for an agrarian nation of 5 million people living by candlelight in homes thatched by mud. So my suggestion is, if you really insist on this right, then keep to the spirit of it, which means you can still own a gun,